Mono Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Good evening and shalom. Welcome to Liberty and Friends, pardon me, here on the Big Daddy Liberty Show. My name is Sihle Ngobese. Big Daddy Liberty, it is a Sunday evening. You know what that means. It means your favorite fat boy is on your screen for what is becoming your favorite week-ending news roundup show. Woo, that's a mouthful over there, but I hope it is not much of a tongue twister, because tonight we're going to look at a particular character who twists his tongue quite a lot, a forked tongue at that, as he says multiple things at once for his undying fans. We're talking, of course, about Jacob Zuma. We'll get into him in a moment. Him and a few other things that made headlines this week. Of course, remember, Liberty and Friends, which comes to you every Sunday at 8 p.m., is exactly about that. We look at the news headlines that were in the week. What got you angry? What got you maybe happy? Or what had you gnashing your teeth? Here on Liberty and Friends, we'll have a revolving door of panelists who are the friends, if you will help me unpack the week, providing news, analysis, and opinion on those very top headlines. Tonight on Liberty and Friends, a veritable mix of very interesting characters. Some new faces, one new face I'm very excited to have on the show. Before I get into any of that, a reminder to you as I keep an eye on the comment section. Okay, I'm seeing a buffering warning from someone. Just keep an eye on that for me, people. I will try and see if it's a Wi-Fi thing or the network thing. But as I said, let's keep going. A reminder to you, as you're even streaming in, hit that like button. Hit that like button right now. Do it right now. As I'm waffling away and talking about this, that, and a third, hit that like button. It helps get this show out to a wider network. These algorithms, as a lot of these YouTubers say, the algorithm is working. But hit that like button. It really does help. And of course, share the stream, whether you're watching on Twitter, Facebook, or on YouTube. The show, of course, is simulcast on all of those platforms. Hit that like button and feed a kid in Africa, as I always joke. Welcome to it. This is Liberty and Friends. Tonight on the show, I'm going to bring my guests on, beginning with a rather familiar face, a chap who's been on the show quite a bit, but we haven't seen him in a while. He works, of course, at the Daily Friend publication. That is www.dailyfriend.co.za. All your news, analysis, and opinion on a daily basis on that publication. Marius Roodt, who is on screen now. Marius, good evening. Welcome to Liberty and Friends.
Hi, Sihle. Glad to be here. Looking forward to this evening on the panel.
Excellent, brother. We are looking forward to your views and sharing what has been on the Daily Friend this week. Another familiar face, someone who's become a firm favorite here on Liberty and Friends, the 1/3 of the trio out at the Manpatria podcast. The spelling of that is in the descriptor of the video. I'm talking, of course, about Koketso Resane. Koketso, good evening and welcome to Liberty and Friends.
Yeah, good evening to you. Good evening to everyone else as well sitting at home. Good to be here again.
Absolutely, brother. Very good to have you on the stream. Another familiar face who I introduce as being my go-to on all things self-defense and firearms related. He's becoming an absolute guru, a must-hear voice in that regard as we prosecute the issue of defending our rights to defend ourselves as the doorbell goes off. If you hear dogs barking, please bear with me, folks. At a friend's house. But I'm talking, of course, about Gideon Joubert. Gideon, good evening.
Good evening, Sihle. Good evening to Marius and Koketso and everyone else watching. It's great to be back. Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely, my brother. And of course, last but not least, the new face. I always talk about it. It's become custom in this house when there is a new face for me to do the new face dance. I'm talking, of course, about Ian Cameron, who is the founder of firearms.co.za. Ian is a familiar face to a lot of you. Ian, good evening. Welcome to Liberty and Friends.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
Excellent, my brother. It is such a pleasure to have you on the show. You're someone who, of course, I have been keeping an eye on social media on the same issue that I just raised earlier on about our rights, really. I call them our rights, even though Big Tele would have us believe it's a privilege. Our right to defend ourselves and using a firearm as a tool. We'll cross that bridge a little bit tonight, because I think it overlaps on some of the issues that we'll look at. And with that being said, just give me a minute, folks, as I turn off this little feature over here, or rather I turn it on. Oh my goodness. Let's ignore that little sound and get straight into it. Guys, this week has been an interesting one. I think the news headlines have been dominated really by one Jacob Zuma. In fact, today was a rather interesting day out in the land of Nkandla, where good old Jacob is based, where he too had an impromptu episode of Jacob and Friends, if I can call it that, where he too brought his friends. And what did we see? Gideon, I'm going to begin with you. We saw scenes of, hordes of ANC people, mostly the disaffected groups of the ANC types. And rather concerningly, a stern message being sent by them, given them firing rifles and pistols in the air in defense of Jacob Zuma.
So this has been probably the most interesting family meeting we've had in the past 18 months, if you can excuse me being cuttingly sarcastic there about it. But I'm going to come with a very perhaps different and maybe unconventional take on it. This is exactly the moment South Africa needed. It was something that we've been working towards in various separate machinations for a very long time. Probably not by design and not by his intent, but Jacob Zuma has just in essence destroyed any viability, any how shall we say it, any foundational grounding for this lockdown. And the mainstream media has completely missed the boat. We are sitting with a situation that has the potential to develop into a constitutional crisis, if it is not, in fact, already a form of constitutional crisis. And they are tweeting angrily about these people gathering in Nkandla, the thousands of them, breaking lockdown regulations, not socially distancing and not wearing masks. My first reaction to that was, are we perhaps living on separate planets? That you cannot see this moment for what it is. You cannot digest the gravity and the gravitas of the situation and adequately express it for what it is, that you need to persistently, like some sort of deranged preschool teacher, keep going back to these kindergarten rules that are forced upon us. Someone made a very valid observation and said, but we had pensioners water cannoned as they stood queuing for SASSA grants. We had restaurant owners and their staff fighting for their survival, for their livelihoods, get similar treatment by the police. Bekitsele is a complete picture of impotence and hypocrisy this evening. And we would be very, 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 how shall I say, we would betray ourselves as a society if we did not hold him and our president accountable for their failure in this regard, because Cyril Ramaphosa himself is responsible for this. He is.
Absolutely. Again, there's nothing in what you're saying which I can disagree with. And I'll go one further, because I also made mention of that exact point. It was funny to me that for a citizenry who have been told for the past 460 days plus, that you must listen to us as the state, who were told if you don't listen, there'll be a big stick that comes your way. And in fact, nearly 500,000 of our fellow South Africans have been locked up for one reason or the other by the state, which has used that muscle, that fear-mongering, if you will, of if you break one rule or other of this lockdown, we'll lock you up, they told us. But it seems as though the one category of people who do not get locked up are the political elites, really the those who resort to the thuggery, the fear tactics, because again, Marius, I'm going to come to you. You saw two prominent incidents, if you will, where there seems to be one set of rules for one and another for another group. That was the EFF as they took their march to Sapra 2 or 3 weeks ago in Pretoria. Throngs of EFF supporters following, like acolytes, their leader to the head office in Pretoria. And of course, today, out in Nkandla, where hundreds of people, by the looks of things, gathered with a wanton disregard for even the police presence that was there, little as it is, or was, the police presence at once that was there, a disregard, a wanton disregard for it completely. Talk to me about the police in particular, because I want to zoom in for a moment here, Marius, because the police have been on the receiving end right now of negative publicity, well-earned and well-deserved, to be honest. And again, they are the embodiment, of failure right now.
I just one point I want to make is we must also remember that some South Africans were also killed for breaking lockdown rules. They weren't just locked up. I mean, we must remember names like Collins Corza and Petrus Michels and so on. And I remember Collins Corza wasn't actually even breaking lockdown rule. He was just having a beer in his garden, which he was allowed to do, and he was beaten to death for it. That's something we mustn't forget. But yeah, so as you make, as you point out about the police, I think it's a good time to bring up the Institute of Race Relations Broken Blue Line project. So that's a project, we've done 3 reports on it. I know Gideon's quite familiar with it. I'm actually working on a 4th edition of it at the moment. And the last one, that was our 3rd one. It had a very imaginative name of Broken Blue Line 3, because it was the 3rd one in the project, or 3rd report. And what we did was we looked at the police, the involvement of police in serious and violent crimes in South Africa. And we just took, for the most recent report, we looked at, I think, 2019, and we actually stopped looking after we'd found about 100 incidents. And these were when police had been accused of rape or armed robbery or of murder. And what was quite frightening to find was the very high levels of involvement, violence and serious crimes of the South African police. I mean, the name that comes to mind there is Chris Prinsloo, who was selling weapons to gangs in the Cape Flats. When people had handed in their weapons, I think he was at the Vereeniging police station. And also another finding that came from the report was that levels of trust in the police have been dropping constantly year after year. And while I've been working on the 4th edition of this of the Broken Blue Line project, a survey from Afrobarometer, which is an organization which looks at surveys, social attitudes and so on in a number of African countries. And in South Africa, the police are the 2nd least trusted institution in the country. The only institution that has got less trust than the police are opposition political parties. So that's quite something. But also, just an aside, what was the most trusted institution is traditional leaders. So I don't know what that tells you about South Africans. So yeah, but so this report, Broken Blue Line 3, and also what I'm finding with Broken Blue Line 4, nothing's really changed in the 3 years since I did the last edition of it. Police are still heavily involved in these kinds of crimes and so on. And obviously, this doesn't mean that, most police are, whether they're in the SAPS or the various metro police departments, most police are, policemen and policewomen are hardworking and dedicated to the job. But the police, it should be almost impossible to find reports of the police being involved in serious and violent crime. It's not something that the police should be involved in. And in South Africa, it's so easy to find. And I'm sure for many people, when they're driving at night or whatever, on their way home, and they see a roadblock, they actually, the first emotion is probably one of fear rather than one of, the police are keeping us safe. So that's something. And I think part of this, there's Afrikaans saying a fist foot van sy kop. And I think this is part of it. I mean, we can also look at crime statistics and so on. Since 2010, our murder rate, and the murder rate is always probably the best statistic to look at when we're looking at overall crime rates, because with a murder, you have to report a dead body, for example. So, but since 2010, our murder rate has been increasing steadily after coming down from about 1995. So now we're at about, I think, 35 murders per 100,000 people in South Africa. I think it's the 8th or 9th highest in the world. It's the 2nd highest out of countries with more than 10 million people. Only Venezuela is higher than us. And that's, that's basically a failed state. So it doesn't say much that we doing any better than them. So yeah, but I think a lot of this does come from just poor management of the police themselves. And I mean, we've seen with the basically revolving door with comes to National Police Commissioner, and we have Becky Cele, who's the Minister of Police, and we all know he doesn't seem to be the most competent fellow in the world. And yeah, we've seen from what through the lockdown what the police have been doing. There's we could go on forever and like point at lots of things that the South African police have done wrong over the past couple of years.
Absolutely. And I just looking at the comment on, shout out to Heinz Strobel out in the Garden Route. The Constitutional Court's credibility will now be in question after this. We'll get to the Constitutional Court in a moment. Again, we're going to do this in chunks because this is quite an elephant, and we need to take it bite by bite. And we're focusing right now on the police. And Marius raised a point which I think is absolutely critical, which is the ordinary police officer, the majority of them, and I say this having no data on this particular point, just anecdote, of course, are great men and women who are very devoted to the work they're doing. They come out of the very communities that they're trying to police. However, the problem is the actual institution itself. Remember, personalities never matter, dear viewer. It's always the institutions in a democracy that are fundamental to the prosperity, if you will, and the functioning of that society. And the SAPS, or the South African Police Service, as an institution, is fundamentally corrupted and broken at a management level, and at a governance level. Governance represented by Ubegi, the asshat, the Minister of Police, and of course, the various cascading levels of police management who are absolutely inept, incompetent, and flat out corrupt. These are the same people, by the way, who have not been able to pay, for example, for the very services which are core functions of the policing, things like forensic lab services, the firearms registry, the system around that, and the like. I have two voices here who are experts on this particular issue, and I'll defer to them. But let me come to you, Koketso, because again, that final point is the part I think that irks a lot of South Africans. The idea that we've gotten to a point where no one in this country realistically calls the police when something has happened or if something is happening. The facts and the evidence bear that out, where private security, for example, now outnumber police 5-1. South Africans are voting with their pockets in showing you where the failure is happening. That's the first point. Secondly, no one takes a one asshat Begitele seriously when he says things like, well, we'll be tough on not only just crime in general, but enforcement of these lockdowns. We're seeing this particularly in townships. In Cape Town at the moment, we took a drive out to Enyanga and Kylie, and I can tell you now, no one is wearing masks. No one gives a flying fudge about this notion of social distancing and the like. People, it's business as usual there. Talk to me about that disconnect that we're seeing, where the political elites keep pretending we're one thing as a country, but the rest of the country see past that ruse.
Yeah, I suppose the biggest thing here, which is my irritation really, is that you pay your tax to SARS, they take the money, and God forbid, when you don't pay tax, of course, you're going to go to jail, but you're effectively paying for a service you never receive. The boom in private security specifically is due to the simple fact that, I trust my local security company more than I do the police. My local security company is also more visible than the police as well. And, in your greatest time of need, particularly if you're involved in community groups and the like, that's where you get your help. Let's be honest. Phoning a police station or dialing 10-111, as we were all told when you were young, is actually not effective at all. But yeah, the biggest thing there is that we're actually paying for this. And to even make matters worse, when you walk into a police station, right, even the attitude, again, not everyone, but even the attitude you receive as someone walking in is not of a requisite standard either. So no one trusts the police. No one wants to trust the police. And given the choice, no one would actually make use of the police at all. I mean, I think I speak for many people when I say a lot of us only go to a police station outside of crime, of course, outside of being victims. A lot of us only go to a police station for one of two reasons: A, to certify documents, and B, to get something like that criminal clearance. I forget what it's called. But now, speaking into your other point here, right? Just the inefficiencies in enforcing some of these lockdown regulations is quite worrying as well, and also screams that Begitele in particular, he's very selective about how and where he enforces. We've seen that he'll take a camera crew and walk on a beach, for example, just for the optics of showing that the police are actually enforcing the lockdown regulations. Famous incident last year where there was actually a film crew in Cape Town with the requisite permit, etc., to do some filming inside of the lockdown. And the minister didn't want to hear it. He just saw cameras. Actually, I'll be very honest here. He saw cameras and he saw white people and he said, nope, this is not allowed. And of course, he bought his own camera crew so that everyone can see what's going on. But go to a township and there's no policing in general, so he doesn't take the job seriously as the minister. And on top of that, it's really the law-abiding citizens who, let me say, the mostly law-abiding citizens who are negatively impacted by what the police are actually doing. Someone like a Collins Khoza who decides, I will abide by the regulation, I will stay at home, and I'll sip my beer inside of my property, and he ends up losing his life. And again, he's far from the only case, of course, but he's just the most famous one. So really the trust we have with police is at its all-time lowest. And I'm not surprised that with regards to what's happening over in Nkandla, they're really taking their time to actually enforce some of these rules. Had this been a crew of another film crew of primarily, let me say, white people on the beach, they would have easily gone there in numbers. We saw what they were doing when people wanted to actually go out and snorkel and surf. They were there in numbers as well. But only the political elite get away with a lot, and it's a little bit similar to the situation we have with the Human Rights Commission as well, where people will say all sorts of racist nonsense, but the moment someone like Julius Malema says something, these same organizations, which are usually first to respond and they beat their chest about how they're going to put the perpetrators to book here, those same organizations are nowhere to be found when the political elite actually commit the same thing that you and I would do but would be put to book for. So it's quite worrying, but again, I'm not surprised.
Absolutely. Ian, I must come to you insofar as just a quick point of clarification for the viewers. And I won't speak for my friends on here, but I'm not arguing or wanting to see the police enforce with a heavy hand these regulations. In fact, these regulations are just, I've said it before on the show and I'll say it again, they're absolutely useless. They don't really stop this virus. They do nothing to, quote, stop the spread or slow the spread. If anything, they stop your freedoms and they'll stop your liberty and they'll stop your ability to put bread on your table, but they sure as hell aren't stopping a virus which will do exactly what a virus does, which is to spread until there's a reasonable amount of immunity, either through having gotten the virus and beaten it, i.e. developing the immune response, or a vaccine. But having taken that little digression, Ian, let me come to you, because there is a conversation to be had here about a police infrastructure that is being shaped by politicians to be really tough on the elderly waiting in line at SASA, really tough on beachgoers, surfers, and mamas who are selling acha in Johannesburg. But Twaga, as I said, Twaga being a Zulu word for silence, not a peep on those who seemingly show that they're willing to confront the police with arms also, because that's what we saw. Let's not beat around the bush here, guys. That's what we saw today out in Nkandla. Guys, some of whom look like security operators. If I just look at their infrastructure, so for example, rocking up to Nkandla with semi-automatic rifles, firing them off in the air, and really looking the part of intimidating. Almost they come at us, dear police, and we'll meet you rifle for rifle.
I think I would like to react to what Koketso said first.
Sure, go ahead.
If anyone was wearing a bikini today in Nkandla, they would have been arrested. So I think it's all in the clothes. No, I think you raise a whole lot of important points. I think, first of all, let's go look at the National Commission at the moment. So all the advice for the past 10 to 15 years, and I think a lot of it actually, Marius, I just opened the report in front of me. Can you check it? Broken Blue Line 2. And in the release of that, we actually talked about the decentralization of command or management down to station level as well. So during that time, probably in the last 10 to 15 years, we kept on saying we need to decentralize command and we need to make sure we've got career police officials or members that become national commissioners. Then we had Khomotso Pakhlani as the first one that came in, and he he was pretty surprising in the way that he started looking after members, and he was a career official, and then another corruption scandal happened. And then when Fikile Mbalula became the Minister of Police, he did a very strange thing, and a lot of people missed it, but he actually centralized the command to the point where the minister was starting to call the shots. And I can show you this. I mean, go and look at the last 20 speeches or presentations that was done in Parliament. General Setole doesn't say a word in most cases. In fact, I laughed at the media today, at mainstream media, that said that the Minister of Police has released a directive. A minister is not allowed or not meant to be releasing directives. So in short, this whole Nkandla thing shows us that the police have become an iron fist for the ANC. And I feel very sorry for members on ground level, because for many years I've worked with a lot of cops in different places. In fact, just over a year ago, I spent some time in the Cape Flats, and I do not know how some of those cops keep or stay motivated. They have a daunting task ahead of them, and yet they are an utter inspiration to me. But then you go to other places, and not only has government failed the members on the ground. I mean, just a few years ago, Gideon and I spoke about it the other day. Just over 47% of cops in the Eastern Cape that carried firearms weren't competent to carry them. But now they want to disarm law-abiding citizens. Just over 20% nationally at that stage. And that was the last proper internal audit done in the police. So it's almost 10 years later, and we haven't seen a proper internal audit done again for over a decade. And this shows you why the standard of policing has deteriorated so much. First of all, we don't have career officials really running the show. We don't have any decent process anymore that looks after the well-being of cops, not only psychologically, but in other places too. And I think to just color this in and emphasize it, Bheki Cele was the one who pushed more and more people into blue uniforms before the FIFA World Cup when he was the national commissioner, because we didn't have enough cops, supposedly. And some of those people failed their tests at police college more than twice. They still got a third, even a fourth remedial, and they still got a blue uniform. All of these things that I've mentioned now add up to a point where a decade later, we've got a failed justice system. We've got an Nkandla where the political elite can do whatever they like, and people can walk around like in parts of, for example, war-torn Middle Eastern countries and fire rifles up in the air. It's absurd and it's anarchy. And now we've got someone like Zuma coming in and asking for sympathy from peace and loving South Africans just after he looted everyone's pockets. It's a scandal.
It's a laughable situation. Fellas, give me a moment to remind my dear viewers, welcome to it. We're nearly at that 8:30 mark, 30 minutes of the show. It's a 90-minute show. Welcome to it if you've just joined us. Please hit that like button. There's about 485 of us watching at the moment. Please hit those like buttons, guys. It helps get the show out and about, especially to new people who've never seen Liberty and Friends or even been on the PDL show. Welcome to it. This is Liberty and Friends. I'm in conversation with Marius Roodt from the Daily Friend, Koketso Resane, pardon me, from the Manpatria podcast, and Gideon Joubert, of course, who's from Paratus.info, and a new face on the show, Ian Cameron, who's the founder of firearms.co.za. Fellas, I'm going to move us to that next segment now that I was talking about of looking at the Constitutional Court. It blinked this week, if we're to be brutally honest. Here's a court who were told, historically, once the Constitutional Court rules on something, we were told that's it. It is the apex court, the pinnacle court in this country. Its word is law, so to speak, and must be enforced by the state. Well, did that not come crashing down to an extent when it then said, well, we might then hear this appeal by, or this I'll call it an appeal for lack of a better word, because I've never known an appeal from the Constitutional Court for the Constitutional Court. Goodness me. But now we have a situation where, and I'll come to you, Gideon, and then to Koketso. But, the Constitutional Court effectively blinked here, and they gave Zuma a a little bit of breathing room for him to then play his sort of Zuma-esque rhetoric games?
They gave him an inch, and that's all he needed to get the crowbar in there. And I for one, again, being unconventional about this, I'm very grateful this has happened, because the Constitutional Court itself was long past a day where its mask of benevolence needed to be exposed for what it is. There have been numerous judgments forthcoming from that bench and from that court that have been, in essence, flying in the face of the constitutional rights of ordinary citizens, that have imposed tyranny upon them, especially pertaining to this lockdown. And it has always been upheld as this almost messianic institution that is above reproach and above criticism, because, you know, it's the best of the best, and it's this amazing what shall we call it, edifice of the, you know, that represents the highest tier of the rule of law, which it patently is not. It is staffed by ordinary people in robes that are qualified, that have their own interests, own machinations, own agendas, many of them being slightly activist in how they, you know, follow through on those agendas. And again, it's a case of South Africa needed a painful awakening as to what the truth is. When Ramaphosa came in as president in 2019, the mainstream media held him up as the smiling, competent face of a good ANC, you know, that is somehow absolved of all the wrongs that it committed to the citizens of this country over a very long period, where those wrongs were laid squarely at the feet of Jacob Zuma. And bear in mind, the man is far from innocent, but he is more a symptom of a problem than the cause of it. The bigger problem is an institutionalized culture of looting, of totalitarianism, of the self-serving cadre deployment politics that has become a culture of the African National Congress. And that's never addressed by the mainstream media, by the corporate media, or by trendy lefties, because that goes against what they want to believe. They want to so desperately believe in the good ANC, whilst we're all watching the good ANC row us over the Niagara Falls. And again, which is why I think this particular event is so fundamentally important for the way going forward in this country.
Absolutely. Marius, that notion that was burst today, or that myth, pardon me, that was burst today, if you were someone who is a staunch believer that there is to an extent, an equality before the law for everybody, as they should rather, today you quickly were able to see that is just simply not the case. If you are a nobody in South Africa, if you don't have a political title, if you're not part of the friends of this or the league of that, then really you're the one who gets the stick that the state promises. And really, the elites continue as if nothing's wrong. In fact, today on stage, Zuma played a victim card, which I've never seen since the days of Umalema, you know, with him appearing before court, excuse me. You know, he was telling us about how, you know, Judge Zondo is just after me. He's such a meanie, you know. Didn't he know, and I quote, I paraphrase rather, not quoting, didn't he know that I didn't say I didn't want to go to court. It is, or before the Zondo Commission. I've always wanted to go before the Zondo Commission. It's just that when he called for a recess, I thought that meant I can go home and take my medication. That's literally in his affidavit.
No, it's quite something. And I don't know, over the past, since the beginning of last year, if anybody thinks that there is anything like equality before the law in South Africa, then I don't know where people have been living under a rock or something. I mean, just like we've spoken about things that happened during lockdown, people getting arrested for just being outside their house, and we saw like police dragging people who just gone for a jog and pulling them into police vans and so on. I mean, but obviously there's way worse things that have happened in South Africa than somebody getting arrested for going for a jog. I mean, we've spoken about it already tonight. And also, I think I might also be a bit contrarian here, and also just say that I don't think Jacob Zuma actually has all that much support really in the country, outside from maybe some pockets in KwaZulu-Natal. I was just looking at his approval ratings was a polling done by Gallup, the American polling company. And in 2010, Jacob Zuma's approval rating was 67%. So more than 2/3 of South Africans thought he was doing a good job. By 2017, it was only 25%. So that is, I mean, that cratered. It dropped very quickly. And I don't see that would have gone up since 2017. I'm sure if you had to do the same kind of polling now, you find most South Africans don't really, think Jacob Zuma as somebody to look up to. And also, I think you can also tell a lot by somebody from the company he keeps. And I mean, the most prominent people who are supporting Jacob Zuma are complete. I mean, then they know nobody that anybody looks up to. I mean, it's Carl Nias, who might be one of, I mean, I don't get sued, but I mean, he's not a very smart man, I don't think. I mean, there's Mzwanele Mani, who's also kind of, his reputation's, he doesn't have the greatest reputation anymore. I mean, there's also Mzwandile Masina. I mean, he's probably the most prominent ANC person giving support to Jacob Zuma. I mean, I probably also shouldn't say much about Mzwandile Masina because I live in his municipality. But I mean, he's come out to give support to Jacob Zuma. Just today, he tweeted that Mugg & Bean was closing down. I mean, in 200 stores or whatever in South Africa, it was complete nonsense. I mean, I don't know where these guys come up with this kind of thing. So, and yeah, I mean, as I say, I think I don't think Jacob Zuma has all that much support, but I can see at the Constitutional Court and the government has blinked here. I think these gatherings need to be stopped. Obviously, with no violence at all. Obviously, that's the last thing I want to see is, violence down in Nkandla. But this is not something that should be going on. And I mean, lots of rules have been broken, even just these COVID regulations, but also the firing of live ammunition, which is illegal as far as I know. So I mean, there's so many things that the reason for these gatherings to be stopped, but they've gone on for whatever reason. And yeah, so, but I mean, I don't think that I mean, Jacob Zuma, he doesn't have access to the patronage networks anymore and all that kind of thing. Obviously some people who probably support him do have access to them, like Mzwandile Masina, I would imagine. So I don't see, this Jacob Zuma issue. I don't think it's going to lead to some kind of civil war in South Africa, and I've seen some people saying that Jacob Zuma needs to throw his weight behind some KwaZulu-Natal secessionist movement, but I also don't see that happening. So yeah, but I mean, it is a problem, obviously. I mean, I don't think we're going to see a Jacob Zuma-inspired civil war in South Africa, but it's also a problem that he is being treated how he is at the moment, and he's not being treated as an ordinary South African would be.
Koketso, let me throw it to you because there's two issues that Marius raises that I wanted to chew on. Number one, this issue of support. I was retweeting quite a lot of people today who were making fun of this notion that Jacob Zuma will destabilize the country. When one funny tweet I really enjoyed, I gave it my usual order chief Monica. When I saw it was a chap who says, "What's this talk about Jacob Zuma destabilizing the country? Hey, nonsense, man. This guy's going to destabilize Nkandla at best and KwaMashu second. That's it. The rest of the country will continue on as if nothing happened." But there's an element of truth in that. But what I find I'd like you to speak on is that there was an attempt today. There definitely was an attempt today to intimidate, though. Even if we are unable to quantify what his support base looks like, but this definitely was an attempt to intimidate.
Yeah, there definitely was. Someone smarter than me once said that it was Jacob Zuma who actually introduced quote unquote Zulu nationalism inside of the African National Congress. And it sounded maybe ridiculous at the time to some people, but we're actually seeing how it plays out. Reports from this morning that the N2 was chock-a-blocked with people all heading north towards Nkandla. So yeah, I don't think, I personally also, I'll echo Marius here, that I don't believe he's got much support outside of KZN, but I don't think he has much support even in I'd say the quote-unquote thinking community as well. I'm talking people who are to some degree influential within their different spheres. Of course, people like, our mayor, Mzwandile Masina, Jimmy Manyi, I shouldn't say Jimmy, he's formally changed his name now. So yeah, Mr. Manyi and the likes. But again, these are people not a lot of others look up to, generally speaking. They're not thought leaders in whatever they do. They just happen to be politically connected, and that's how they that's the clout that they ride off of. But yeah, I mean, with that said, going back to now, again, what happened today, probably the most disheartening thing, or not even disheartening, but if you just look at what's actually playing out, particularly with the Constitutional Court blinking as well, to me it just looks like Jacob Zuma is throwing everything in the kitchen sink. And I'm personally waiting to see what the Court is going to entertain here. He's claiming ill health. He's also claiming that, he's claiming ignorance, and that, again, like he said, he's very willing to participate in the commission. But again, he's interpreting the break as an opportunity for him to go home, in direct contradiction to his senior counsel, who at the commission specifically said that, Chair, we are going to walk out of here. And that's exactly what happened. And then on top of that, they're basically claiming that the judgment is worthy of being rescinded because of a minority judgment by Constitutional Court justices. Again, minority, so there's quite a lot at play here, and he's just throwing everything at the Concord, hoping that something would actually stick. But again, the biggest issue, and I've already tweeted this, is that if you or I were to be arrested, or were to be sentenced by the Concord to actually go to prison, I kid you not, we'd be in the orange overalls by now. This is definitely a first, and it is setting a precedent. We even seen with the public protector now trying to pull a page out of that same book and basically make her own copy and ask for judgments against her to be rescinded. So it's quite a shocking state of play here. But like you mentioned, outside of the Zulu nationalists and those who firmly are of the belief that Black people are being targeted, and with Zuma being the first to go by some people's wishes, outside of people with that thought, I really don't believe that Jacob has much support. And we can also actually reference the last election results where Cyril Ramaphosa actually won the election. It wasn't, he didn't win on a ticket of, I'm the Zuma-backed candidate here. It was actually quite the opposite of that. And ANC still managed to pull a 2/3 majority for parliament. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Ian, let me come to you. There's two issues here. But before I do, we're at the halfway mark, just before the halfway mark of the show. This is the 90-minute show. We're at the 45 minutes in a moment. If you're just joining us, welcome to it. This is Liberty and Friends. My name is Sihle Ngobese, Big Daddy Liberty. We're having a conversation about the news headlines that made the week. Sawubona, welcome to it. Hit that like button, please, as you're joining us. There's about 623 of us, wow, on the stream tonight. Molo, Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Welcome to it. Hit that like button, please. I really do appreciate it. Ian, I wanted to come to you with this particular quagmire, so to speak. Giggly. Just kidding. Okay, no one caught that. But this particular issue, which is, there is a absolute erosion of the rule of law here. Let's be frank, guys. Insofar as if someone like Zuma can openly, actually, let me take two steps back. This is what I want you to deal with. Firstly, the implicit belief that by Zuma and friends, that we as South Africans are fools, that we are idiots, that he can literally, at the commission, tell Zondo, Judge Zondo, and of course the nation, because it was televised, that no, actually we're leaving, Judge, because we're sick of this and blah, 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 for whatever his reasons were. For him to have taken that position where there's legal counsel before, then as the chips are beginning to degrade around him with the Constitutional Court imposing this 15-month sentence on him, he then turns around and says, well, actually we didn't want to leave. We wanted to be a part of the process. I just left, as he says in his affidavit, to go take some medication. And it just happened to be that Judge Zondo had called a recess, and we thought he had said we can go home because we'd asked for it before that. Sorry, I know this sounds convoluted, but that's literally what he says in his affidavit. Zuma, it clearly is coming across that he thinks South Africans are fools. Is he right, Ian? Are we fools? Do we believe this crap?
I don't even think it's just him thinking that. I need to be careful about how I word this, but in my opinion, the fact that the Constitutional Court granted him this little benefit that he gets above all other citizens in the country, one must ask the question, why is it being allowed? I'm not even going to talk about the ANC because they one big laughable matter on their own, but even the police. I mean, is there no pride anymore in good old justice? Is there no such thing as holding people equal before the law? Because this is becoming an animal farm type of situation where, you know, everyone's equal, but some are more equal than others. And we've seen it before. I think Gideon actually summarized it perfectly earlier. We've seen it before, and we knew about it. But this is the first time that the Constitutional Court has made an absolute blunder from something that was actually quite simple to handle. And it was an opportunity to uphold the rule of law after years of scrutiny, after years of criticism about the justice system. And just as so many South Africans felt almost hopeful, you know, they saw this, and I was reading the tweets and I said to my wife, I don't want to be rude, but Zuma's not going to prison. And I would like to actually go as far as making the comparison. I think I said it on Twitter, but Zuma is like the Pablo Escobar of Nkandla. You know, he's got his little La Catedral prison, and you know, he imports his wives and his girlfriends and everyone, and he's got a fantastic time while the police guard him inside his prison. They even help with the transport, and I wouldn't be surprised. And the list goes on. So no, South Africans aren't the stupid ones. They are not the senseless ones. I think it's actually might just be a good thing to tell people to wake up. There's no such thing as a good ANC. There's no such thing as an innocent Zuma. Zuma is a criminal, plain and simple. That's it. He is a blatant criminal. He should be behind bars. And in fact, he should be handled in a more harsh matter because of the oath that he took to respect the constitution of the country. Because any one of us five speaking here tonight, if we make even one of the mistakes that Zuma made, I guarantee you, all five of us would be cellmates in Pretoria Central.
Absolutely. Shout out to you, Patrick Vucher Fenech, for that super sticker. Well, hey man, that's quite a surname you got there, homie. You'll have to show me or teach me in a little voice note as to how I can pronounce it, but I really do appreciate that super sticker. Wow, 721 folks watching, but that engagement, guys, is very low. Please hit that like button. I know you're watching and you're enjoying the insights from everybody, but it helps get the stream out to a wider audience. Please hit that like button. Do it now, as I'm just waffling away here. Gideon, let me come to you, and I think I'm going to change topics a little bit so that we can just keep the ball rolling, because when you talk about level 4 lockdown, right, that was the third component of today, right? There's this idea that, you know, under level 4 lockdown, everybody else gets shafted. Everybody else has their businesses closed, for example. Everything that is of normalcy to us is disrupted by the state. And seemingly, as we began this conversation, we said there's one rules for the elite, one rules for us, the plebs, the ordinary people. Our lives get disrupted, but seemingly, single mshiniwami to your audience, hey man, that show keeps going on. But there's a shocking, and in fact, I must be frank, because I might lose my temper even as I talk about this issue. It registers at that level. We have a lady, a young entrepreneur here, a lady named Uapiwe Musani Mawela, who launched a brewery. This is a black female who started something where it's very rare. In fact, she's one of the few, if not the only, black females who are brewing beer. You know, like sorry, I'm not a drinker, so I don't know what you call these pilsners and lagers and, you know, these beers, right? Which are usually the preserve of big corporates like your SABs and the like. But here's this lady who says, no, stuff it. I can do this. I'm going to start this business. I'm going to hire people. I'm going to grow this business. And it was doing very well. She was the darling of the brewing industry, winning accolades for a quality product. So it wasn't her trading on her race. So I'm a BEE producer of this beer. No, this lady was a professional. She was a highly qualified individual producing a quality product that was growing. And it wasn't her failure that is seeing her now having to shut her doors. No. It was the state and politicians imposing on her these asinine lockdown regulations that is shutting this business down. Gideon, this is where I want you to chime in. This is the same government this is the same government who will come and say things to me like, well, we represent the Black entrepreneur, we represent Black business, they'll say. Black businesses stands because of us as the ANC government and the political elites. That same government has crushed this woman's dream, crushed this woman's business. How should I not be angry as I am right now?
You should absolutely be angry, Sishle. And again, my opinion might be fairly unpopular because I see lockdowns, regardless of whether they're level 1 or level 5, as immoral and evil. And I see people who support these lockdowns, unthinkingly as they are, out of fear, as enabling immorality and evil and enabling violence against innocent people whom they don't know and clearly don't care for, from a position of extreme rank hypocrisy and sort of holier than thou pontification. Now, what again this has proven, this disparity, if you open your business, the boys in blue will be there faster than a blink of an eye and have you handcuffed and thrown in the back of a cheese van and have you locked up for violating the DMA regulations. What Jacob Zuma has proven today, and his faction of the ANC, or even if it isn't the ANC, that there is the highest law of the land in South Africa is not the constitution. It is violence or the credible threat of violence. Because if you bring more violence or a bigger threat of violence than the authorities can deal with, the South Africa Police Service, or the small boys, as the Lesotho Zamazamas refer to them, makes the small boys run away. They will open the freeway and they will let you through, simply because they do not have the capacity or the will or the support to stop you. And that is not, unfortunately, how a liberal democracy works, which again illustrates fairly clearly that we are not living in a functional liberal democracy. And this is something that frustrates me to a great degree, that the media just refuses to engage with this reality. It still carries on screaming about masks and social distancing. It does not engage on the hypocrisy of one set of standards for the royal game and an entirely different set of standards for us mere mortals trying to survive, as well as how we got to this disparate set of standards. And the fourth estate is a complete waste of time, but Absolutely. We're at least having this conversation, thankfully.
Absolutely. And Koketso, I want to come to you because, again, it infuriates me. It infuriates me. You'll have these people who come to me and say, oh, no, Big Daddy, you're just here because you like white people and you like white monopoly capital and you're going to defend them and blah, blah, blah. And then I point them to someone like Apiwe. I point them to someone like me, who is also an entrepreneur, small-time entrepreneur. I'm a small-time wannabe commercial farmer. I'm in the transport sector and I'm struggling right now. There is a conversation to be had about that small entrepreneur, the doer, the creative one, the risk taker, as I put it in a Facebook post. That person is being crushed in this country, whether they're Black or white. And it's a travesty when it is a Black individual, because that same Black person is told by this government that, no, we support you, for example, with all of these asinine laws like BEN and blah, 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 blah. When that same Black entrepreneur is then crushed by the state, it is almost doubly painful for me to watch. And this is why I wanted to chime in, because there's a section here that actually it got to me a little bit, because these deepest fears that Apiwe, the master brewer, she's a master brewer with 13 years experience. This woman put 13 years of her life, of blood, sweat, and tears into this business, and it was crushed in a matter of 460 plus days by politicians who've never missed a salary once. They've never missed a salary once. I quote, "My deepest fears became a reality in January." This is Apiwe being quoted in this piece. "My deepest fears became a reality in January this year when we had legal action started against us for failure to meet loan repayments and honoring arrangements made after the first two alcohol bans." This is Umusani Mawela, Apiwe Umusani Mawela. I can feel that pain in her voice because I know that dreaded fear. When a creditor comes to you and says, "Hey, chap, where's our cash?" And you can't explain to them, "No, I'm sorry, the politicians have shut my business down, I can't pay you." It is an anxiety, a psychological state of being that perhaps we're not talking about as South Africans, that these politicians have put ordinary people, my fellow South Africans, through.
Yeah. So maybe one of the biggest disconnects we have in South Africa, particularly even amongst the educated, is this grand belief that the business environment, the private sector is just full of only non-black players. That's the grand belief people have. And when we hear of businesses shutting down, etc., even I saw some of this morning when the rumor was going around that Mug and Bean was closing its doors permanently. You have people who then come in and say, well, that's all for the better, so that Black people can now begin to start opening their own franchises, their own restaurants and the like. So there is this grand disbelief, honestly, that business is only ever done by white people, because even amongst Black people, the success stories, the rare, very good, very inspiring success stories like a Pure story, they don't get told. When they do get told, they'll typically be put in a publication, let's say like the Business Day, where you and I will come across it, but the vast majority of people won't. But probably what makes me even as angry as you about what's actually happening with small businesses is that they have no agency, or they have no platform to actually lend an ear to government when it comes to now execution of this Disaster Management Act. We spoke about this quite a bit on Manpatria actually in the around late last year, about how the alcohol ban specifically it almost weaponizes the government's ability to shut down a small business, irrespective of who owns it. We spoke at length about how even if a white business owner is not given relief funds, what about all of their Black employees and the likes? But the really infuriating thing, I suppose, is that Black business in particular has to get through so many hurdles for you to become a success. And in the event that you do, the moment you're not politically connected, or the moment you don't depend on a tender, for example, to make the bulk of your income, the moment you're that person, you're really pushed off to the side. And we see this time and time again. In fact, it's so detrimental that when you are a Black business owner and you didn't make your money through government contracts, people even go to the length of saying that, we don't know how this guy made his money. They basket you with the few who actually make money by quote unquote sucking up to other white businesses. When you want a quality product, or you want, let's say quality steel or quality packaging, and you get it at the cheapest price available at the nearest place you can, and that happens to be a business that is not Black owned, it paints this picture that you are actually against the success of other Black people. And so our politicians, or those who are politically connected, even in the business space, they have a very similar mentality when it comes to business. It's very telling with what we saw happen actually with regard to the PPE situation, in that they are God to honest companies and business owners who could have profited greatly from selling PPE. People who already had companies in that space, but they were outright ignored in favor of companies who are owned by politically connected people, who overnight then decide we are going to add PPE as part of our product offering. So yeah, it's very disheartening, but we see this time and time again. And when the dust settles and all is said and done, Ms. Apiwe she might be able to get back on her feet and continue where she left off. But most people won't be that lucky, and there goes yet another successful business or Black business, which could have been used as a story to inspire the kid in the township, inspire the kid in the village. All of that is gone.
And again, I must be frank for my viewers here. I'm not trying to play up the white versus Black businesses. I'm actually trying to make a more nuanced point here, which is often Black entrepreneurs are sold this myth by the political elites that somehow they are a special category that is looked after by the politicians, and the politicians go out of their way to look after for them. So that when you then have that same Black entrepreneur, be failed, and not just failed, but crushed purposefully by the politicians, not only does that make me livid, but it literally, my BP will go through the roof, because I understand what it is to live in a country where, whether you're black or white, this is a tough business environment for any entrepreneur of any race. But it makes it worse when you're sold. There's this wonderful expression a former colleague of mine used to say, they blow smoke up your butt, to the point where when things do fall apart, they're nowhere to be seen. They're nowhere to be seen. The politicians have never come out and said, you know what, we're sorry. We know we've put you through this. We know you're missing paychecks. We know that, your staff, you're struggling to pay your staff, and that there's situations where people are unable to put bread on the table. That's where it breaks my heart. And that's where I become very, very angry, because you're messing with the faith, flag, family, and freedom type South Africans. Sorry for this rant, but it really is something that irked me this week. And I always begin the show by saying, what annoyed you in the headlines this week? Marius, let me come to you. As I perhaps move us into a slightly different direction, I'm just keeping an eye on time. It is 9 o'clock, which means only 30 minutes left of Liberty and Friends. I'm in conversation with Marius Roodt from the Daily Friend, Koketso, Resane from Manpatria podcast. Pardon me, Gideon Joubert, who's the host of the Paratus.info show. And of course, Ian Cameron, who's the founder of firearms.co.za. Please check them out in that part of the world. Before I forget, I don't want to forget this, but also I'll be chastised in the comment section. Let me just go back and find it. Shout out to you, Etienne de Beer, for that rather generous 350 Rand super chat on YouTube. Shout out to you, homie, with the comment being, thanks, BDL, for highlighting essentially what we're going through as South Africans, the incompetency of government. And shout out to the rest of the panel too. What an excellent panel it is indeed. Guys, in the final 30 minutes of the show, I'm going to gravitate us a little bit in a different direction. But before I do that, I will give Marius and Ian a chance to chime in here, because I'm sure this is a matter that resonates at a personal level for you guys too. You perhaps have friends or family members who are just literally missing payments right now because this level 4 lockdown is absolutely crippling to them. Marius, personal cases of these, and what are you seeing in your part of the world, perhaps your favorite deli, your diner in the area? Are they still even operating?
Well, no, I mean, I think for all of us, when you go to a mall or whatever the case is, or if you're at a shopping center, you walk around, it's very rare that there isn't at least one or two shops now that shuts it and it's too late and what have you. But just to your point about you said that this isn't about black business versus white business, and you're completely correct. As big business versus small business, because
Absolutely.
It's in South Africa. It's been kind of this trifecta of big business, big government, and big labor have always. I mean, it hasn't been explicitly so, but they've kind of conspired against the little guy. Whether to, it's South Africa. The problem with South Africa, there's no such thing as the black economy or the white economy. It's the insiders or it's insiders versus outsiders in South Africa. And that's been the case going back to Cecil John Rhodes, if not even before that. That's why big companies, I mean, they can handle, being told on Saturday night, oh, by the way, you can't be open for the next 2 weeks. Good luck. A little mom and pop deli or whatever, or pub trying to run itself for 2 weeks. I mean, not having an income for 2 weeks is in big trouble. But famous brands or whatever the case is, they can, they'll be able to make a plan if they're not selling alcohol. It's fine. They've probably got decentish reserves or whatever the case is, and that's the issue in South Africa. It's, and also big companies are also much. It's much more easier for them to work with regulations and so on. That's why big companies don't mind things like BE and these extra regulations that companies have to jump through to do business with the government and so on. It's much harder for, say, a 10-man company. Now you have to have somebody who's got to make sure they comply with all the various regulations and the red tape and that. For a big company, it's much easier. You can put, you can pay 10 lawyers to do all that kind of stuff for you, and you can make yourself be compliant even if you 100% buy a white guy, whatever the case is. So yeah, but I mean, sorry, Karen.
Sorry, I was just saying, Marius, sorry about that. I was just saying, I wanted to come to Ian, because Ian, this week, we then learned, for example, and Marius makes a critical point. The big gulf here really is the difference between big business and small business. And you might even find that there are pockets of big business who are very happy with these regulations and restrictions. Why? Because it shuts out the prospect of there being competitors, small-time competitors who eat into their business, who eat into their niche. SAB comes to mind here, who this week they finally, came out and said, well, we're going to take this government to court, and because we must fight for our rights here, blah, 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 as a brewer, because, families are starving, hapati, hapata, was the reason they used in this. But I actually tweeted back at them, and I added them, because I had said this to them before, and I'll say it again. Too little, too late. You literally now have a situation where you've agreed in principle with politicians that you're on board with this whole nonsense of lockdowns, so that it will become incredibly difficult for you to then even go to court and argue the case, because some judge might even ask you, well, where were you before? There's been 2 bans already. Why suddenly now? But it seems as if when it only began to affect, their bottom line, suddenly they whip out the lawyers, they whip out the big resources to fight this in court. That hypocrisy it eats at me. I don't know what it does to you.
Yeah, I honestly think there's a shortage of contact with lots of these corporate entities on ground level. I don't think they spend enough time in the communities that actually fill their pockets, because if they go and spend time to see what the people on ground level feel, then the case might change. But it's too easy to throw money at the problem, or have enough money to throw at the problem, and just sit behind closed doors or closed walls. I think it's astonishing. I listened to an interview earlier this week about from a lady that works in the hospitality industry in the Western Cape. And she just said that they've got absolutely no contact with the management of the specific hotel group that's literally just ditched them. And the hotel group, and I'm not going to mention them now, but the hotel group openly said, but we need to support this lockdown, and we need to make sure that we adhere to all these regulations. And now all of these people are going home, often the only breadwinner in the house, and they've got no food to put on the table. And obviously I'm preaching to the converted now. We all know the terrible consequences of it. But I think what we need to emphasize is that larger corporate entities need to start pressuring this, because at the end of the day, it's starting to feel like certain corporate entities have become lapdogs of the ANC. And it's as though they rather prefer to sit around with the ANC and make sure that the ANC are happy with them, instead of the very people that make sure that they actually get their salaries at the end of the year. And I'm not even going to talk about the ANC, because unfortunately we pay their salaries too. And that's apart from the part that they steal. So yeah, I think in short, it's crucial that whether it's, even if it's too little, too late, corporate entities really need to come out the blocks, and they need to start taking part and supporting the people that are suffering on the ground.
Absolutely. Gideon, I want to give you the final word on this before I move us on topic-wise, pardon me. But the issue I think I was trying to prosecute is this one. It seemed as though that everybody got listened to except the people that matter by big corporate South Africa. And that is, the politicians got listened to. They were given veneration and, all the space to be like, yeah, we're in this together, they told us, whether it was big corporates in the health insurance sector, or even shilling for government, big corporates in alcohol. I can go down the line. But the one people they didn't listen to were the actual customers, i.e. the people who actually bankroll even these big corporates, and they were even shafted in some cases.
No, it's absolutely true. And what we've seen from corporate SA has been nothing short of disgusting. And I hate to put something forth that's become very much a socialist talking point, but it's true. And when it comes to big corporates, it's profits before people at all costs, from what I've seen. I mean, and you've seen the type of bizarre disconnect from reality, and the most disgusting ivory tower talk that makes Marie Antoinette, would make her blush with shame, is the CEO of Discovery, that I cannot believe said you need to stay at home and order on Takealot or order online. And I'm like, dude, we are one of the most impoverished nations on earth, one of the most unequal nations on earth. The overwhelming majority of our population is either in densely populated townships or in rural areas, and you have the audacity to talk of this as if we're all just like upper middle class folks who can afford to sit for 3 weeks without an income, watching Netflix and ordering pizza from Mr. Delivery. And this is a CEO of the largest medical aid in the country. Similar statements were forthcoming from the CEO of Netcare, I believe. And I can't remember if it was Life from Netcare, but I don't care like which hospital group I insult, because they're equally bloody evil and captured and interested in licking the ANC's balls. Sorry about that, folks. It's a Sunday night, but I'm getting irritated as well. I have not seen a single major corporate, MTN, that switched off the internet in Swaziland while all that stuff was going on. If you think a big corporate is your friend, I hope that this has been a massive wake-up call for you to realize that they will take your money, but they don't care about you. They will load you in a cattle if the government pays them enough. And
we lost you there for a second, Gideon. But I want to echo your points as I wrap up the section and we go to our last topic for the evening. You know, I say this on the show and people are surprised because they go, "Oh, but Big Daddy, you know, you tell us you're a capitalist, a classical liberal, you know, a free marketeer." And I get, yes. And the thing I often say is, I'm not pro-business, I'm pro-markets. There's a very big difference because given half the chance, the business sector will happily sell people down the line as they try and get into cozy relationships with politicians, these crony relations with politicians, even at times at the expense of their own customers. And that's what I, in terms of the work I do, the advocacy work that I do, when I do travel around the country, is to push this notion that South Africa ought to become a market society, a free market society where ordinary people, individuals, really families, are given the opportunity to get a skill, build a trade on the market, build an income, and of course, savings. That's how you build an economy in a society like ours. Gideon hit the keyword already in terms of the last issue that we'll look at tonight, because it has been an absolutely shocking state of affairs just across the border at, or depending where you enter, from either KZN or Mpumalanga. That is, of course, Eswatini, formerly known as Swaziland, one of the final really absolute monarchies in the world, not just on the continent, but headed by King Mswati the Third, if I'm not mistaken. So what's happening there, Big Daddy, as you said? Well, it's descended into absolute anarchy and chaos insofar as what began as a series of protests around that country. There's only really 2 or 3 urban centers there, but so let's just say around the country, headed up by youth formations primarily, and of course unions, which have always been in opposition in that part of the world, and what I can broadly call political formations, because there are no political parties in the country. As I said, it's a monarchy. You know, started hitting the streets, demanding reforms of various natures, including democracy, the idea that they can vote in the very people who govern them. And what we've seen happen in that part of the world has been the monarchy pushed back, by sending soldiers and, of course, police to repress these protests rather violently, including some clips that have circulated online, which are absolutely hair-raising, of agents of the state or the police or soldiers literally violating people's homes in search of dissidents, i.e. democracy protesters. Ian, I'm going to begin with you, because this is that archetype issue that we always talk about of when you don't have an empowered and even armed citizenry, this is the kind of thing that can happen. When we talk about gun ownership, for example, it isn't just about defending our life, liberty, and property rights from the petty criminal, but it's also defending ourselves from the tyranny of the state.
Let's start by saying that the disarming of innocent, law-abiding citizens, regardless of the country, is the start of expropriation without compensation. So that's the intro. When you want to take something from citizens, you disarm the good people that would defend themselves, their families, their neighbors, communities, and obviously their property. So we should start there. What's happening in Swaziland should serve as a very important warning to why South Africans, even those that don't like firearms, should be involved in fighting this ridiculous firearm control amendment bill that our fantastic Minister of Police has announced a month or so ago. If ordinary South Africans do not jump in to fight this ridiculous bill, it is they themselves, even gun-free South Africa, will be the ones really suffering if something like that is ever granted in any country. Go look at Venezuela. I think Venezuela is probably the country the closest to South Africa that we can really compare with in terms of social challenges, poverty, all of those things, and a lot of ups and downs in history. and the absolute tyranny that those communities are facing is shocking. And here's the thing: as soon as you become too dependent on government to safeguard you, that's when the first warning lights start. And I think that's a problem for not only the last 20 years in South Africa, but most likely the last 60, even 70 years in South Africa, because this tendency started growing that government will look after us. Government will make sure that there's a defense force or that there's a police. And we say, no, that's not the right way. It's good when communities work with government to safeguard people in their own, legislative framework. But it is crucial that in any country, in any state, communities of all sorts need to make sure that they take responsibility for their own safety. The buck stops there. It's all good and nice to wait for the cops to rock up. But the point is, you are on your own, no matter where in the world you live, at that moment when that incident lives. And any person that tells me that when they are facing a cruel criminal in front of them, that they aren't praying for someone armed to show up, must be mentally ill, because that's the first thing you wish for, is someone with a gun that shows up and that knows how to use the thing.
Absolutely. Marius, let me come to you, then Koketso, then Gideon. Marius, it's almost tear-jerking to an extent when you watch terrified Swazi residents cowering in their homes behind burglar bars as soldiers go door to door, with shambox, with sticks, with rifles cocked in hand. I didn't say cock in hand, dear listener. Listen carefully, as Jacob Zuma would say. But cocked in hand, kicking down doors, storming them, dragging people out, beating them as if, they are this weird father figure disciplining a child. These are citizens of, I can't say a free country, but these are citizens of a monarchy in that part of the world being treated like subjects, like animals. Hey, we don't even abuse animals like this, but that image is heart-wrenching for a South African who lives in a country where, despite our problems, there are these freedoms and rights that we have hard fought for, and we see our neighbors just to the, I can't call them north, but we just see our neighbors not even enjoying basic rights.
That's terrible. I also saw a video where soldiers rocked up at somebody's house, and then they're talking to the people inside, and they just pulled the lady out, and they were, started beating with a shambok and clubs and whatever, and it was absolutely terrible. But this is something that's been building up for a while. Swaziland over the years has been, closing down the space for democratic contestation, whatever. I mean, it's obviously never been democracy, but I mean, I think things changed in the 1970s where political parties weren't really allowed, and part of the reason these protests have apparently happened is because ordinary Swazi people now can't even approach their MPs, because even though it's not democracy, you still have the parliament and people vote for individuals, just not for political parties. But now apparently even this is not being allowed anymore. Ordinary Swazi people can't go to the MP with various problems and what have you. And we've also seen, I mean, I don't know how true this is because it's obviously on Twitter, but there's an account that apparently tracks the Swazi King's spending. And there was, I mean, I can't remember the exact figure now, but I think he bought a watch for something like 10 million rand. And I'm sorry, it was a very gaudy, horrible looking watch. I don't know how you'd spend flipping $1,000 and they want 10 million.
Crazy.
But I mean, and yeah, Swaziland is also, it's a country, like, obviously there's no democracy. Its economy isn't particularly strong. They rely a lot on South Africa for remittances, and obviously tourism is a big income creator for them, but that's obviously been hammered over the last year and a half with COVID and what have you. So I'm sure a lot of this is also economic stresses that have made people go onto the streets. And let's hope that we can see some reform in Swaziland without too much more bloodshed. From what last I heard on Friday is that 40 people had been killed and at least 400 had been injured. So let's hope that number doesn't grow. But I think this is now where South Africa needs to use its regional clout to make Kingdom Swati at least come with some reforms. Nobody's, I'm sure, can come to some situation where the Swaziland can retain its monarchy like Lesotho's done, and it's still a democracy. I mean, so it's a monarchy and allows political parties and whatever, and proper elections and so on. So let's hope we can come to a solution sooner rather than later with the minimal bloodshed. But also, I just want to say, I think it's also disgraceful that what MTN did. And I mean, yeah,
Absolutely.
like Gideon said, yeah, the corporates aren't your friends, and they definitely aren't a friend of the Swazi people. That we can see from that now. So.
Absolutely. And again, it makes that point of why I'm saying it's critically important that you have markets and not a reliance on big business. Because markets would have meant that Swaziland has multiple, for example, service providers for networks and blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't. There's a special arrangement, a special agreement of the Swazi government with the MTN exclusively. Why? For these exact reasons. When tyranny wants to shut down the ability of ordinary, what should be free people speaking and organizing, free speech being a critical tenet of what should be a free society, it can do so by shutting down and allowing that shutdown because its friends in the corporate world allow for that. Koketso, let me come to you, because we're now seeing images of ordinary Swazis. I saw some text messages that were screenshot on social media being spread by South Africans, of course, because Swazis themselves couldn't do so. People saying, it's hell. Now, there's no food, there's no fuel, that we can't communicate, we don't know if loved ones are okay, for example. It is absolute, when we talk about tyranny, Koketso, this is it. This is actually it.
Yeah, it's absolutely chaos over there. And I've kind of been watching this as well over the past week, because I believe everything kind of went to hell starting on Monday. But yeah, Marius actually said everything I wanted to say as well. But with all of that said, let's keep in mind here that, turning off communication is always step one. Step one, you shut off communication. Step two, you do what you like, knowing that you can control the narrative. If international bodies or whatever comes in after the fact, there's no hard evidence or something similar. So this was all done on purpose. And yeah, thinking of just MTN as well. Again, this is, like you mentioned, this is exactly why you want a free market in there. The issue that the Swazi people have, I believe, is probably a very economical one. We're sitting at a point where we know that Eswatini is very much heavily reliant on South Africa as a trade partner. And with South Africans and South African businesses not doing well, that will have a domino effect in the situation back in Eswatini. And people have decided that, actually enough is enough. Talking about the king himself, he is quite a known big spender. I believe there was a time when, maybe this is over a decade ago, but there were only 2 Maybach cars in the continent. And he had one of them, Back in 2019, there was a convoy of, Rolls-Royce vehicles, really luxury stuff here, 120 plus luxury vehicles, all headed to the kingdom of Eswatini. People this side obviously caught glimpse of it because, they have to go along the N4 past Nelspruit with a big hullabaloo of where are all these luxury cars going. And eventually people are enough. The freedom aspect of this is really just that, in that you want people to be able to vote for government that they want. They currently don't have that in Eswatini. They have a prime minister who I believe is actually appointed by the king himself as well. So again, all of this, if you're a Swazi citizen, where do you actually run to? Who do you hold accountable for the condition you are in? Things have never looked really good there. We talk a lot about our HIV/AIDS statistics in SA. Have a look at the Eswatini ones, even worse. We sit here with a man who has our South African government as a big brother to call should things really get really, really bad. He's done these calls in the past, particularly when Jacob Zuma was president as well. Few times his government actually ran out of money, and he was able to make a call to Zuma's government to say, listen, can you lend me a hand? And we know that there's not just a buddy, there's some form of family ties in there as well, I believe. So big ups to the people of Eswatini for actually starting to stand up. And like Ian would say, they at this moment in time really do wish that there was some form of competent individual or groups of individuals who are armed, who can actually protect them from tyrannical state police barging down your door dragging you out onto the street, and then whooping you with shambocks. Unfortunately, we've seen those videos, because I can imagine if you trek out to the very edge of the country, you likely you will likely receive some form of network signal to actually send this information out. Maybe before I wrap it up as well, the rumors of all the deaths and stuff has actually been proven true. There are quite a few individuals who are keeping tabs with what's going on in the country there, and they're getting their information from actual medical professionals and doctors and the likes, who then come out and say that, listen, we can confirm X amount of people have died, because, I'm the doctor who had to write it out. So yeah, it's not a hearsay or anything like that. These things are actually happening, and it's time for us to step up as a regional body, I suppose, not just South Africa, but as SADC, to actually take control of the situation.
Gideon, let me check I'm not muted. There we go. Gideon, history repeats itself, my brother. As I said in the intro to this particular piece, and you'll have the final word on this particular story, King Mswati is the final monarch, really, absolute monarch, really, of any country in the world, not just in Africa. But, when I think about the power that just rests in this one guy's hands, it makes me think of a historical figure, a one Louis XIV, for example, who once famously said, "I am the state," when, people questioned why power isn't in many more echelons of that society. He said, "I am the state," with an arrogance to him that eventually saw his head come off. I'm not saying anything before so it comes after me, but the point being, it elicited an anger amongst the people to say, actually, no, we are the power as a citizenry. Talk to me about the importance of what needs to happen from here in terms of the region. Should South Africa get involved? How should we get involved?
Well, it's a very difficult one, because we're expecting our own sort of criminal gangster state to launch an intervention in a neighboring country that they have patently proven themselves to not only be unable of doing, but we court tyrants almost as a form of tradition. We're big friends with Robert Mugabe. We were big friends with every African strongman, tin pot dictator, for various reasons, because birds of a feather flock together. And I almost think that the ANC looks at what is happening across the border with a sort of panic, in the sense of that they identify that this is a similar sort of thing that could happen to them, to unseat them. Because much as how King Mswatini pursued absolutism to the extent that he has, the ANC wants the same thing. They want the sole monopoly on the use of armed force and violence. They want the sole monopoly on communication, hence the legislative amendments they're proposing that would regulate what you can say, and to a degree what you can even think. They want to centralize control over your child's education. They want to centralize control over your employment. All of these things are heading towards the same form of totalitarian absolutism. The only difference is there's no monarchy involved. It's a type of theocracy where the state is God. And this is the thing that South Africans need to also understand is this comes back to gun rights that Ian very sort of mentioned earlier, is that it is not about the guns. It is about civil liberty. It's about your most basic civil rights and individual liberty that is presently under significant threat of not just erosion, but elimination. And the only thing that politicians, and especially these ones, respond to is pressure and force. And for you to be an active citizen right now is of fundamental importance. We are at a crossroads in South Africa. We are on that fulcrum. Today is proof of that. So put your apathy to bed and please become involved in steering the ship that will decide your future.
Absolutely. Maybe my final take on this, guys, would be exactly that. It's to remind people. It is to actually remind people, and actually to call out. I want to quickly call out a group in this country who are very loud on other platforms, but are quiet as church mice on this particular issue. You have these types who like to trade on their race and their skin color. They'll often say things to me, for example, like, they stand for blacks and blackness, they'll tell me, and that they care about the, quote, the African child. This wonderful expression that we'll often hear from politicians in this country, or the black child, they'll say. Where are they now? Where are they now? As, quote, black children, as they like to condescendingly call them, are being killed, are being maimed, are being shot at by the state, a tyrannical state, just across the border from us. Where are they now? Where are they now? Why am I and a few other people some of the loudest voices on this issue when apparently we only care about whites on the BDL show? These are the things, the hypocrisies that really get to me. And again, I've been all ranty this evening. I'm sorry about that, dear panelists. And maybe on that particular note, we're running just over time here. I'm going to give everybody the final word. With that being said, Ian and Gideon, I will have you guys on again as we prosecute the issue of our gun rights in particular. I know there's a protest planned. I don't know if that's still on the cards, but I'll let you speak to that in the final word. Marius, you go first. Final word. What can we expect from you this week? And your thoughts?
I just recommend everybody to go read the Daily Friend, dailyfriend.co.za. It's got news and opinion you won't get anywhere else. And maybe in a month or two, also look out for Broken Blue Line 4, which will be looking at the involvement of the police in serious and violent crime in South Africa, and also come up with a couple of solutions. We also don't want to be people who just, always say this is what's wrong with the country. Also want to provide some solutions that we can look at.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Looking forward to that. That's the Daily Friend, dailyfriend.co.za. Let that be your daily source for news, Koketso. What can you expect on the Manpatria show? And of course, what are you going to be looking at in this upcoming week?
Okay, so over at Manpatria, there's a new series that's out, basically tackling or emphasizing the Austrian perspective, aka the Austrian School of Economics. So again, when we talk about capitalism and the economy, it's quite for a lot of people, they have no idea where to actually start. So I give that over a look. Otherwise, check me out again on the Manpatria podcast. It's coming out on Mondays now. It's just a bunch of guys who are having a couple of laughs and looking, much like on this platform, looking at what's really been happening before. As to what I'm doing this coming week, I'm actually catching up on my Thomas Sowell. I'm ashamed to say I have books by him I still haven't read. So I've decided to go the audiobook route this time around to curb my laziness. But yeah.
Hey man, shout out to Thomas Sowell, who had his birthday this past week, actually turning 91. Yes, I will echo that sentiment. Please watch the Manpatria podcast. It's one of the few places where you'll hear about how the political grifters in this country. Okay, Koketso knows what I'm talking about. And if you want to know what I'm talking about, please go to the Manpatria podcast out in that part of the world with Koketso, Dumont, and I'm a favorite surname. Zuzo. There we go. The legal eagle. Ian, brother, let me give you a final word. What will you be looking at in the week ahead? And I know you're beginning to write a lot more now. And firearms.co.za, what's that all about?
So firearms.co.za, I think, was actually boosted a bit during this whole firearm control amendment. The idea behind it is to make sure that we tell every single story regarding gun rights in South Africa. And this isn't a platform where we tell everyone to get armed. We just tell people why it's important that civilians are allowed to be legally armed. So, we talk about all those different perspectives. And obviously, we're part of the Safe Citizen campaign. So for the coming week, not only will we be carrying on supporting Gideon and the team with the RSA and making sure that people submit their comments regarding the bill, and we're really going to push that because we've got a bit of an extension now. But we will continue to push the debate and make sure that we pull people in. And I think it's a very important time to make sure that we empower average citizens with the knowledge that they need, short slogans, short important facts and figures that they need to remember when they're standing around a braai or somewhere else to be able to have the right discussion points. And then also from a Safe Citizen point of view, I want to encourage people, join the Safe Citizen campaign, go to the website, and make sure that if it's Safe Citizen or something else, that you get involved, because you're not allowed to complain if you're not involved in a civil right type of space or civil organization of some sort. So you can take part in the debate, but make sure that you're making a difference on ground level.
That's right. I fully agree with that. Shout out to you guys out there at firearms.co.za. Excellent initiative. Please check it out, dear viewer, if you're watching the show. Of course, Ian is someone who will have again on the BDL show, especially as we move into that issue of our defense, our rights, really, our ability to defend our life, liberty, and property rights. Gideon, final word, my brother, goes to you. What are you looking at this week? And how do the folks reach you at paratus.info?
Yeah, you can reach me at paratus.info. We also have a YouTube channel, and we'll be having interesting live streams Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday night at 7 p.m. all 3 nights this week. It's also going to be a very busy week for DRSA. We're ramping up the public participation campaign on this particular Firearms Control Amendment bill, as well as others. So please check out DRSA, put it in your Google, click on the website, and just click through and participate. Your voice matters. Apathy of the citizens is a greater threat to our democracy than tyrannical government. And the only way we fight against apathy is by empowering citizens to make their voices heard and making them believe that that's important. Marius, I very much look forward to Broken Blue Line 4, regardless of what title it is. I can't wait to read that. And my last thought is just safe word, or rather, Rebecca Willems's famous quote, which he said, South Africa, your safe word is freedom. You better learn how to use it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Shout out to that comment by Mareka. I like that one. As I see my rabbi in the comment section too. Shout out to you, Rev. I see you, homie. Guys, thank you very much. I really appreciate you all for having joined me on the BDL show. That is Liberty and Friends, your Sunday evening show. Make sure you go to all of those platforms, please, by the guys on here. It's in the descriptor of the video as I just get them all off screen. And thank you for watching this episode of the Big Daddy Liberty Show. Guys, please, please, please remember, you can support the show by just hitting the like. As you exit right now, hit the like button. As you exit, it really does help get the show out and about. Liberty and Friends is clearly quite popular. It's one of my popular shows, and we'll definitely keep it going and get some fresh faces also on with interesting perspectives. If you want to support the work that I'm doing, either the Mazakele campaign, which I'm trying to fundraise for so that we'll be able to hit the ground and go across the country to be able to do the advocacy work of fighting, or rather pushing liberty ideas into the community, but also showing you, those South Africans who already are doing things or building things for themselves. We're currently doing the backroom work on that, and you can also support that by becoming a contributor, monthly contributor to the show. It can be as little as $20, $50 a month, and all of those information is in the descriptor of the video. With that being said, thank you so much for watching, guys. Super appreciated. I am in Cape Town until the end of August next week, or this week, sorry. In terms of what I'll be doing, we'll be filming an episode as I talk to Cape Townians, business owners, workers in the hospitality and tourism industry who have been hardest hit by the lockdown level 4 shenanigans, people who have lost their income and livelihoods. I'll show you what it really means when politicians play these asinine games and who really is harmed by this. So we're going to be filming that throughout the week, and you can look forward to that the following week, Wednesday. This week, Wednesday, of course, will be an episode of the BDL show. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. Super appreciated. Thanks, Hein. I see you. And I see all of you guys in the comment section. I super appreciate it, guys. Please hit that like button. As I remind you at the end of the show, as I always do, to never trust a commie.